Hey folks, Jimmy here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new Get Started with Warhammer 40k video. As per usual though, if you like this type of content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course drop me a comment down below. I love hearing back from you guys, it goes a massive way to helping out the channel too. Now, with this series of videos we have been looking through pretty much every faction within the 41st millennium and picking out a small starter force for the price of £200. Now, this is all done theoretically. We are not buying a physical force at £200 because that'll be a little bit crazy. So, we are utilising pricing from Warhammer.com and we are also picking a third-party retailer to get prices from because some of them tend to be cheaper. For this, we are using Wayland Games as our third-party retailer of choice. However, there are other third-party retailers out there, such as Element Games, Goblin Gaming, Just Play Games, Leodis Games, and many, many more. So it's definitely worth shopping around before you spend your money, because you might be able to bag a few bargains. Now, with this series of videos, we have also been having a look at the point score for each army. So this is always going to be a little bit of a rough score, so sometimes it's not 100% accurate, because it can depend on your loadouts on occasion, so worth bearing that in mind. The other thing with this is we are looking at 2 factions per video. So far we've already had a look at things like the Death Guard, we've had a look at the Necrons, we've had a look at the Leagues of Votan, Space Marines, Space Wolves, Eldari and such like. So now we're actually going to move on to something slightly different, in the fact we're going to pick 2 factions that are getting new updated good old Combat Patrol boxes. And so if you're already up to date with that, then you'll already know this is Orks Adeptus Custodes. So we're going to actually start with the Orks on this one. Now, I like this Combat Patrol box. I think it's really, really cool because you get 1 Beast Boss, you get 4 Squig Hog boys, you get a Bomb Squig with boys as well. You also get 20 Beast Snagger boys. That's a fairly decent amount of units. However, it's actually 1 more unit than what you got in the previous box. So if I flick back on my notes, the previous box contained a War Boss in Mega Armor, 20 Orc boys, 3 Death Copters and 1 Death Dread. So it was 25 minis compared to the kind of 26 minis, only because we're counting that Bomb Squig as a mini, that we get with this box. So it's fairly evenly going and it's a pretty cool box. In all honesty, pretty much every unit in that Combat Patrol box on my old list, which I was going to record today instead of this list, before they announced this box should I say, actually was the extra units that I would have picked up on top of the old Combat Patrol box. So it's pretty good. So with that said, we're going to pick some more units. So for this I would actually go slightly different from what I would normally. Normally I'd go with troops and such like. This I'm actually going to go very vehicle heavy just for fun, because I really like the Orc vehicles from Warhammer 40k, to the point where I must admit I always get tempted to buy one because they're really cool looking, for quite good fun, and they're genuinely very, really interesting. So I think I would be really tempted to pick some up. So firstly, I would pick up the Shock Jump Dragster, because look at it, it's cool, it's really, really nice looking. Obviously you can paint it up slightly differently, you can have a bit of fun with it, and there are other vehicles you can pick with this as well, so you can have a good bit of fun with this mini because it looks really cool. Now obviously these were kind of released and you could use them as speed freaks and such like that in that type of game, and they're very, very different. So these are really cool. I just love the vehicles. They're really, really good. Sticking with vehicles, I would also pick the Bombdacker Snazwagon, because my god, that name is brilliant. Plus you have that grot that is kind of roped to the front of the vehicle, which just makes it look even more fun and a little bit more hilarious, and it's just something out of Mad Max, isn't it really? That's what kind of I think more strikes me more than anything. It's that Mad Max kind of look to these units, which is really cool. Now lastly, I would pick something where you have a few more units involved with it, and that is the Orc War Biker Mob. So with this, it's 3 units, so you get 3 minis in there, and they're all kind of these biker boys, and they look very different. They look a bit fun, they look a bit wacky, and genuinely some of them more interesting minis, because yeah, they're just good, aren't they? I quite like them. I like the idea of having these vehicles and bikes and such like for a orc army that just look like made out of scrap and should probably really fall apart at any point. So it just makes it more interesting. It's a unique army as well. So if you wanted to upgrade this army, you can always go things like with Rucker Truck and such like, just to add a bit more to it, or you could swap out one of them for the Rucker Truck or the Scrap Jet and Booster Blaster and such like, because they're all really cool looking vehicles and quite fun. So back onto that army list. So that original list, obviously, that all comes to £197.50 if you're buying it from Warhammer.com, or if you buy it from a third party like Wayland Games, 158 quid, which is a real good bargain. You're getting 5 vehicles, and you're getting loads of the beast snaggers, which are some of the more interesting looking orcs in my opinion. So you've got a really good choice of units, so pretty decent stuff. It is also a 785 point army. Now that is only because of the low amount of units, and in all honesty the beast snagger boys aren't the most solid, so they can be a bit weak. Now if you compare it to the last kind of pick that I had, in all honesty it's slightly lower points value. So the last army I picked was 870 points, so it's just slight variation, but I must admit I prefer that list over the other one, but I wanted to have the beast snaggers involved in either way, so happy days. Now we're going to move on. We are going to move over to the Adeptus Custodes, so the army of choice for Henry Cavill. So he'll probably be pleased that they're getting a new combat patrol box. This one actually does contain less minis than the previous box, which is a bit of a shame. So if you're lucky and you look around on the third party retailers, you might be able to find the old box, so you could always have both of them. If you did get hold of the older box, when I can find the page, in all honesty, you would have had the old box had contained a shield captain, Vexillus Praetor, 3 Custodian Guard, 3 Virtus Praetors, and 10 Sisters of Silence, which is pretty decent going. This box though contains 1 Blade Champion, who's pretty damn cool looking. I do genuinely like that mini, it's a really nice one. You get 3 Alarus Custodians, you get 5 Custodian Guard and 5 Custodian Wardens. Now obviously this is a pre-order box, it's going to be £95 when it launches, or £76 from a third party retailer, and it's not too bad. It's a pretty decent box. It just, yeah, it's less minis than the last one, but slightly tougher minis, so swings and roundabouts. Now the other thing with this is exactly the same as what my previous list for these would have been. I would add in Captain General Trajan Valoris, so a named hero for the 41st millennium, a leader for the good old Adeptus Custodes. Pretty decent looking guy as well. He looks just kind of like he's standing there just stoic, not really in an action pose or anything like that. Bit of a poser from the looks of it, but yeah, pretty good. It's a pretty decent looking unit, and yeah, a bit more interesting. I also then would actually get a Vigilator squad. So these are the good old, they can be also made in Sisters Silence and things like that, if I remember rightly. They look very different. They have, you don't get a lot of minis in there, you get 5, but they look a bit more interesting. So they have a bit of uniqueness with them, with the fact that they're carrying swords and they have their armour, and in all honesty no firepower to them from the looks of it, but they are pretty good, and yeah, not too bad. Now the other thing I would pick with this has actually already been mentioned technically, because I would pick the Virtus good old Praetors. Now these are kind of like flying speed bike type looking units. They're pretty good, and they're a bit different at the same time, so why the hell not? Now this army, if you were to pick it, you're talking about £195 to start with. Obviously there's a bit of pre-ordering involved with this, so from for these. So this is from Warhammer.com. If you were buying it from Wayland Games, £156, so slightly cheaper than the Orks, and pretty decent going. It's also a 1,240 point army, so it is pretty tough and pretty heavy hitting, so it works out quite nicely, so it's pretty good, so why not? Now, I do genuinely like both armies. The Golden Boys of the Adeptus Custodes, very, very different, and obviously there's a bit of a few voices upset on the internet about them at the moment, which I don't care about. In all honesty, if I were picking one of the two, I would always pick the Orks. They look more fun, they have them vehicles, and they're really, really cool and good fun, so why the hell not? Now, that is it from me for this video. I'm going to say thank you very much. Obviously, this one's a bit rough. I've done this with no script. But anyway, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you sometime soon. Bye-bye now.